knew I'd make it again. Yeah, I knew I'd make it again. There. Oh, listen. Before we begin tonight's fiasco, I'll have to give you a word, a couple of words of warning. But tonight's fiasco is quite liable to be very unpleasant. I just don't know how quite to say this. There's all kinds of unpleasant connotations. Just bad news. And if you don't want to hear any bad news, you just better go on, get down the dial. Just please. I don't want to have any I just don't want to have any misunderstandings. I don't want you to come along and think I'm going to tell this groovy story about when I was a kid. It just ain't going to happen. Just bad news tonight. And before we get started, speaking of bad news, we have a commercial. Will you please hit the thing there? There you go. Here it comes. Here it comes.
Palisades has the right. Palisades has the fun.
Come on. Over the poppy says announcer. Sing along with it. All right. Come on. Oh, gee whiz. Come on over. Here we go. Palisades from coast to coast, where a dime buys the most. Palisades Amusement Park. Drinks all day and after dark. Ride the coaster, get cool, and the waves of the pool. You have fun, so come on over. Yeah, gang. Oh, wow. Swim in the world's largest outdoor saltwater pool at Palisades Amusement Park. Greater than ever. That was real nice, wasn't it? Palisades. Isn't it awful what man will do to earn a living? Here I am singing the Palisades Amusement Park jingle. How am I going to answer to my maker for that one? When have you ever thought of your daily grind? Whatever it is that you do in your life. Has it ever occurred to you that it could conceivably be that when you arrive before the vast bar of justice, what you've been doing every day to earn a living will be considered a sin? Here you are, you're out at Happy Flugelman, the Happy Flugelman, the Hungry Armenian used car lot out there on Queens Boulevard, see? And you're selling all them Oldsmobiles, all those 46 Pontiacs and stuff, with the balsa wood transmissions. Day after day after day, you're grinding it out. And every night you come home, you feel like you've done an honest day's work. You sit down on your paisley couch. You say, oh, wow. Man, it's a tough day. Hey, Madge, you finally got rid of that 53 Galaxy. Gee. The one with only 3 cylinders, yeah. Finally got rid of it, yeah. Yeah, this Baptist minister came in, and oh, man, was he a patsy. I got rid of it, yeah. And all of a sudden, boom. You find yourself sliding through this great, vast, pearly tunnel. And then there's a great puff of smoke. And there you stand before an enormous desk that reaches thousands of miles into the air. And at the top of the desk, you can see, barely observable against a swirling cloud of pearly white, beautiful clouds, you see a vast figure with a gigantic beard. It was all true. All that stuff I never believed. My God, it's true. You say to yourself, now you begin to immediately ad lib. What am I going to do? And that vast figure begins to speak. Clarence Applewhite, up 16, 22 and a third, 49, 27, 6, SJ7, Utopia Parkway, Queens. You have arrived before the vast bar of justice. You will now pay for the crimes you have perpetrated during your earthly mortal life upon the earth that you have just left. But there you are, you're sweating. My God, it was all true. All that stuff they taught at Sunday school. He really does have a book. We now look at the vast book of records under A. Applewhite, Charles Watanabe Applewhite, late of 1622 and a third, 6SJ7, Utopia Parkway, Queens, who has departed this mortal globe this instant. What do you say on your behalf? Charles W. Applerod. Well, I'll tell you, sir. What do I say on my behalf? Well, I never did nothing wrong. I mean, you know, I never cheated on Mabel. Never smoked a pot. They can't accuse me of smoking pot. I didn't smoke a pot. I didn't go to none of them dirty movies on 42nd Street. I walked past all of them, and I never went in once. I voted for Eugene McCarthy. Well, I never did nothing wrong, really wrong. Well, a couple of times, you know. One time I will admit, one time when I was a kid, one time I was in a store and I stole a screwdriver. I remember that. I stole a screwdriver and I was sorry, though. I was sorry. I'll tell you, I've been sorry ever since. So I have repented, actually. And, well, I never really did nothing wrong. I guess you're going to find me okay, Judge. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. And by the way, listen, I have some friends down at City Hall. If you want to find out, if you want to ask about me, why don't you call down to City Hall, ask for Big Al in the parole department. They say I'm all right. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, he's my brother-in-law. Yeah, Al Clubberman. Yeah, ask for him. He'll stand up for me. I'm okay. You stand there sweating. Because you really have lived a good, exemplary life. And then the voice passes judgment. Charles Applerod, we find you guilty of heinous crimes, ultimate sin. You have broken commandment number 3. Thou sellest not use automobiles with bad transmissions. Thou hast sinned innumerable times against your God-given morality by constantly observing reruns of the I Love Lucy program, which we consider an ultimate sin against beauty and truth. You have endlessly attended New York Knicks basketball games, paying upwards of $50 extra for seats. You have continually, if not constantly, refused to read a book. So we can only consign you to the eternal fire! And the next thing you know, Charlie is sliding down a fiery chute. And there he is with all the other TV viewers who sat there mindlessly, endlessly watching endless reruns of endless reruns of endless reruns. Down there in the fiery hell of the ancient river Styx, with the great roaring clouds of brimstone and fire ranging over his head as he stokes the eternal damnation of hellfire, and the devil himself is in charge. Ha ha! Get going there! Move it! You have come down at long last. You will pay! 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 That concludes tonight's sermon. That concludes tonight's religious drama, brought to you by the Religious Drama Society of Upper Manhattan, Queens, and Pelham Parkway. Once again, the station has fulfilled another of its public service foundational grants. Copies of the script are available upon request. Send your name and address to Damnation in care of this station. I repeat the address, Damnation in care of this station. Thank you. That's nice. It's really nice. You like that, Jerry? Thank you. Thank you. Hey, listen, as I said, there's a lot of bad news on tonight's show. And I have a note here. I don't know whether you missed it, but for all you nature cuckoos out there, and there are many of them, and everybody kind of thinks, nature's such a fantastic and benign thing. It's only man that's evil. Anybody that's spent much time in nature knows that's a crock up you-know-what. As a matter of fact, hey, did you see that great cartoon? I saw a cartoon the other day of a guy standing on a dock. In fact, there's two guys standing on a dock, saying they have this big, tremendous shark, an enormous shark, hanging up by its tail. And one of the guys is obviously a reporter. He's got a camera, and he's got a notebook and all that, and he's been interviewing this fisherman who's standing beside the shark. And it's a fantastic shark. And the guy who's been interviewed is saying, but if I subtract the weight of my wife, it won't be a world's record. Speaking of sharks, this is WOR New York, and we'll be here for a while. You don't think we're nibbling around your hocks, do you? Oh, I'll tell you, friend. But what I wanted to say here is, if you missed this little piece here from the United Press, still good old friendly nature laying another one on you. Listen to this one. Evil-tempered bees. I want you to hear this, Fred. Now listen, will you? Turn it up. Evil-tempered bees that sting man and beast simply for the apparent pleasure of causing pain are about to invade North America. Now, it's always considered, one of the great misconceptions that people have. I've heard this many times, and zoologists that I know, many zoologists. I've had a couple of friends who've been involved with zoology all their life, and one of the great misconceptions that the average walking around lay person believes is that man is the only creature that, say, one, kills for pleasure. This is believed by most people. Well, there are many animals that kill, apparently, for just the kicks of killing something else. Not for food. Just because it's there, and they kill it. One of the other misconceptions is that animals never do anything for pleasure. Apparently, they never do anything for pleasure. They only do things for utilitarian reasons, like that you sting a man because the man has come there and he's bothering you, so you sting him, right? Well, I repeat, listen to this piece from the United Press. Evil-tempered bees that sting man and beast, not just man, for the apparent pleasure of simply causing pain. So they get a kick out of making you jump and scream and fall down and hit your head on the rocks. Causing pain, threaten to invade America. The African bees migrated from their native land to Brazil in 1956 and spread rapidly over an area which is about equal to the size of the continental United States. Like fantastic, they spread. In fact, when I was down in South America just a couple of years ago, you remember I was down in Peru, the great fear in Peru at that time, and I don't think I ever mentioned this, was the fear that these bees were going to eventually move into the Peruvian area. Well, now, they're all over Brazil. It's about the size of America. He says, this warning about a possible invasion northward came from Dr. M.J. Ramsey, a research scientist at the Agricultural Department. He announced that $40,000 in contingency funds will be made available at the urgent request of the American Beekeeping Federation to study the problem and to see what can be done to prevent its spread into Central and North America. Now, you know, you're sitting out there saying you would never think that the American Beekeeping Association would have anything to do with your life. Well, these are guys that are experts on bees. You know, this is their whole thing. And they're frantically getting after the government to, you know, get ready for this thing. And man, ultimately, oh, wow, these are bad mothers. It says North American bees. Now, they're the ordinary kind of bees that you have, say. Varieties of Italian and German strains. You know, you never think in terms of the bee as having a nationality. Well, actually, or any animal for that matter. You think of the polar bear. He comes from, he comes from the Arctic. But you never think of the polar bear as being basically a Russian. You know that all polar bears today, almost without exception, live in Russia and are Russians? That's true, you know. But nevertheless, it says North American bees, which are varieties of Italian and German strains, are comparatively pleasant. They will not attack unless a possible intruder is at the hive, and they are gentle when they swarm. You ever seen swarming bees? You know, they make a big thing. It looks like a big furry football, you know. And they just swarm and they move along through the yard. Boy, I'll tell you that's a fantastic sight. If you've never seen bees swarming, I know you have, George, but a lot of people haven't living here in the city. They really don't know what it's really a wild sight. I think it's one of the most interesting sights in all of nature. And I remember one time and this is happening everywhere. It's happening out in Westport. It's happening every place around here if you're in the area where it's happening. But I remember one time I was out on a lake fishing. This is only a couple of years ago. I was out on a lake and up in Maine. And I was floating along there in shallow water, and I suddenly hear the sound in the air. When bees are swarming, there's a curious sound like, it's like an approaching fleet of multi-engine bombers. That's the way it sounds. It doesn't sound like a bee, because, you know, there are thousands of them all together doing this. So multiplied by thousands, the sound becomes another sound. It just doesn't sound like a bee. It just it's steady, with a very faint throb in it. I look around, and it seems to come from all directions. That's the hard thing about it. It doesn't just come right out from one spot. You know, just hear the sound. I'm sitting in the lake there, you know, shallow water. The water's about 4 feet deep, and I'm casting for bass or something. What the heck is it saying? I think it's some fantastic, big, giant, unbelievable boat is coming around the point there. It's a heavy, roaring sound. And I see, off by the shore, moving out over the water slightly, what looked like a black cloud. Just a black cloud. It kept moving, like a moving black cloud. You've seen this, George. I couldn't believe it. There, I see this cloud. It was a big thing. It was a big baby. See, I would say that this swarm was about... I don't have any... I'm sure that I'm going to get all kinds of letters from bee people telling me how wrong I am about everything, but I'm just observing what I saw, say, through the totally unsophisticated eye. Well, anyway, this cloud looked like it was about 4 or 5 feet across. Tremendous cloud came out, and it moved along the shore, and here I am sitting about 9 feet from the shore with the boat, see, and it's moving right past me. They didn't pay any attention to me at all, and I saw what it was. It was a tremendous crowd of bees, and they were swarming, and they swarm. They just make a great swarm, and they move. Well, these bees moved down the shore just like they knew where they were going. Just moved down the shore. And they went right past me. They were about, 10, 15 feet from me. I just sat there and watched it. It drifted on past me. They went about, I'd say 200, maybe 300 feet up the shore. And then they made a left turn. I don't know why. They just made a nice left turn, and they disappeared into the woods. And I could hear them in the distance. They disappeared. Now, you know what a beekeeper does when he sees one of those? He can take the entire swarm, so he can capture them. And the beekeeper catches this swarm, and they swarm all over him, and he just knows how to do it. And they don't sting him or anything, really. And he just takes this entire swarm, and he takes them back to the bee nest, and they just go right in. And now he's got a new swarm of bees. These are honeybees, see. Well, those bees are comparatively benign. That's the kind of bee that most people see. Not so the African bee. These swarms that move will attack humans or animals as far away as 200 yards with no apparent provocation. They just come after you, man. That's what that translates into. They're just moving. Say, according to published reports, there have been several people, most recently a young woman, completely stung to death. I mean, you're just dead. That's it. This is not just getting a bee sting. They just go like mad. They pursue you, and they just sting you to death. African bees have a great capacity for swarming, it is said. And the stronger the colonies, the bigger it gets. It's just like cities, like people cities. Listen to this. The larger the colony, the stronger the colony, the meaner and more irritable are its members. Does that sound familiar? That's right. It's just perfect description of New York. Perfect description. I'll tell you it's the truth. And they go on. He says, if swarms unite in flight, and then what happens is these swarms get together. See, if you have, big swarm over here on the left side of the field, and a big swarm over here in the middle, and another swarm over in the woods, and they see each other, the next thing you know, they say, all right, let's get together, friends, and let's give it to them. When they get together, as they often do, they become almost unbearably aggressive and then are ready to attack. The queen bee lays up to 5,000 eggs a day, compared with 2,000 by the North American, or, the nebbish bee, making it easy for them to develop strong colonies practically overnight. You lay down 5,000 eggs a day for a couple of weeks, and you got a lot of bees. And they hatch in about 8 minutes. They inevitably take over the hives of their unwilling hosts. The bees made their South American home in remote, sparsely populated areas of Brazil, but the Agriculture Department recently received an unconfirmed report that the African bee has been sighted in Panama and heading north. They say that they will migrate overland to the United States almost assuredly within the next few years. Now, have you been following animal news at all? I mean, news that's taking place in the zoological world as opposed to a picture in the daily news of a cat that is being rescued by a fireman, which is apparently staged inevitably. There's always one in the news about that. But I mean, real animal news. Well, one of the most interesting things that zoologists have reported in the last 25 years is the increasing movement north of what were basically tropical South American and Central American animals. This has been an increasingly observed phenomenon. Now, they say that there's a lot of reasons for this. One reason is this, that for one, there has been a noticeable warming of North America in certain areas. In short, the temperatures are changing, and so they're moving north. But there's other things, and some of them they don't even understand. Now, do you know what one of the most interesting of them all is? Is the invasion of the armadillos throughout Florida. Now, you've seen the armadillo. Well, the armadillo is basically a South American animal, and has moved up through Central America and so forth. And it used to be that armadillos would be caught in places like Texas and places, in other words, that adjoined Mexico. They'd find armadillos. Well, now a friend of mine is down in Gainesville. He's a doctor, and he happens to be an outdoor kook. And one of his favorite things is to go out at night with a flashlight. Just go out, turn on the lights out in any field, and there's about 25 armadillos running around. He said, like there's 50 armor-plated footballs out there, running around. You ever seen an armadillo? A strange-looking animal. Well, they're practically invading Florida and moving north. They're moving up into places like Georgia and Alabama. They're moving slowly north, and I would say that it will not be unusual in a couple of years if all of a sudden one day some guy out in Yonkers, wakes up and says, what the hell? What's that thing out there? And the next thing you know, coming out of the weeds is going to be an armadillo. and he ain't escaped from the zoo. Now, that isn't the only one. There have been some of the greater cats have been observed, have been moving north. Cats, jaguars, for example, certain types of jaguars that basically were Central American, have been slowly moving north in their range. Now, of course, insects, this is something else again. But the idea of, well, can you imagine what would happen if somebody brought in, somehow he got over here, if tsetse flies began to, you know what this is? This is the sleeping sickness fly. It's famous. Yeah, that's the one that is a fantastic problem in Africa. If he began to settle, say, in places like Fort Lauderdale. Well, what do you think the walking catfish is? You've heard of the walking catfish down there. It's all throughout Florida now. And I was down there here a few months back, and I'll give you a report on it. That right now, the State Department of Fisheries in Florida feels that the catfish, walking catfish scourge, is now reached the point where they can say that there are millions now. They're numbered in the millions, and it all started with one guy, and they know who he is. One guy. One guy has a tropical fish business down there, and he has a place where he grows tropical fish. He doesn't just go out to catch them; he grows them, and he has ponds. And he's one of the big tropical fish wholesalers. So he got the idea one day that he was going to bring in a pair. He was going to have this pair as a curiosity, pair of up to that point rare in America, walking catfish. Now, the walking catfish is something else again. First of all, he's almost impossible to kill because he can make any scene. I mean, if you can imagine a fish that can walk, man, there's hardly any way you can deal with this guy. He's amphibious. So the catfish, if you decide you're going to do something about the walking. Now, why would you want to get rid of them? Well, there's a reason, because the walking catfish has a voracious appetite. He eats like fantastic. And what does he eat? Other fish. So you get a couple of and is tremendously prolific and has no known natural enemies. So the walking catfish, very tough. See, a couple of these guys, they entered the lake. And they look very innocent. So the next thing you know, they got about 17,000 young walking catfish running around. And then they're ready to go into action. So with that, they blow the whistle, and the crowd moves out through the weeds. And within 15 minutes, forget it, the perch are gone. Within another 12 and a half minutes, the bluegills are on their way out. Then they start on the bass. Then after they eat everything in the lake, see, there's nothing but walking catfish. Now numbering about 45,000 in the lake, see. So one of them says, gee, this place is getting awful crowded. So long, gang. And the next thing you know, he's got on his Bermuda shorts, he's packed his sack, and he's hitchhiking down US 12. He's heading for the next lake. Well, then he does it all over again. Well, this is what happened in Florida. Two of them got away, literally got out of this guy's pond. And within weeks, they were in all the canals down there, and they're slowly moving north. Well, there's a case, see, that of nature, and this is the now it is believed, of course, by many people. Now, the only reason I'm talking about this tonight, a lot of innocent people, usually city people, believe that man is the only creature. You even see it on commercials that wrecks the ecology of an area. Forget it. Man is the only creature that worries about preserving the ecology of his area too. Remember that. So the catfish, the walking catfish, can literally destroy the ecology of an entire area within a very short time. Now, how does he destroy this? Well, he also destroys the bird life there. Now, how's this done? Well, because many of the birds, particularly some of the wading birds, say, for example, down in Florida, like egrets and herons and so forth, they feed on minnows of fish, which he destroys. The next thing you know, he's eating all the minnows, and here's this big old bird standing there, and there ain't no fishing. Nothing's happening. And he has trouble anything to eat without fear of instant death. I mean, this spine really is a. You've seen catfish, George. So, the catfish can really louse up the ecology much faster than man can and much more effectively because there's nobody really doing much about it, whereas people are attempting to stop themselves. So an ecology of an area can be completely destroyed by one creature that enters that area. Now, there have been others. For example, to give you an idea, I know a lake up in northern Michigan, for example. It used to be the breeding ground for many kinds of waterfowl, ducks, and so forth. Well, what happened? The reason that this stopped almost overnight was because a certain species of turtle got into that lake that lives off ducks and duck eggs. And I want to tell you, those turtles went, I mean, you never saw anything like it. So what happened, of course, when the turtles ate all the ducks, well, these particular ducks had lived on various types of plant that grew in this lake, which means that these ducks lived off certain types of wild rice, and thousands of them were there. They lived off the bottom, too. They lived, you've seen ducks dive, and they ate weeds and so on. Well, now all of a sudden there aren't any ducks. What's that going to do? Well, the weeds grew like fantastic. And within a few years, this entire lake was nothing but one vast, it became a swamp of weeds. That's all. Nothing but weeds. And nothing but weeds and turtles and mud. So, did you know? Of course, everybody knows these things. I'm not telling you anything new, really. Well, I can tell you other things that are like that, and this may be fairly boring, but I do think that there's been a lot of wild-eyed statements made on television and radio and so forth about what ecology is. Most people think ecology is man throwing Coke cans out of his car. That's ecology. They've confused littering with ecology. Littering is littering. Ecology is ecology. And what ecology is, basically, is a chain of life. A chain of life. It's the study of a chain of life, which means each creature in a certain area is dependent on the life or the death of another creature all the way on back. And that's it. And if that chain is destroyed or it's disturbed, well, then it changes the entire, what they call the ecology of the region. It changes the entire structure. Other examples of this, one of the classic examples in recent years is the example of Great Lakes, the Great Lakes problem. Now, do any of you know anything about the fantastic problem of the lampreys? Well, here's what happened, to show you what will happen to the ecology of an area. That Lake Michigan, which is a long, deep lake, if you've ever take out a map, and you'll see it looks like a great pendulum hanging down. It's a tremendously deep lake. In certain areas, 600, 700, 1,200 feet deep in certain areas. And it's very cold water, and it goes all the way on up to the Canadian border. And up in that area, up in the Sioux, which is where all the Great Lakes come together, Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and so forth. This used to be a tremendous area for deep water game fish. That was not just, actually there were food fish like whitefish, lake trout, and one of the big industries all along that area was fishing, not sport fishing, but deep water fishing for white lake trout and so forth. Well, when they put through the St. Lawrence Seaway, which was cut way up in the St. Lawrence River. You remember when they put through the Seaway, they came through, and that was a big thing, and they had a big ceremony and everything. Well, that meant they were cutting through, the salt water came down through there, you see. And almost overnight, a species of saltwater lamprey worked its way down through the St. Lawrence Seaway and into the Great Lakes. Now, what is a lamprey? Well, that's a fantastic creature. That if you've never seen one, you're lucky. If you have seen one, you won't forget it. It's one of the most ugly, rotten-looking animals you've ever seen in your life. If anything that comes out of nature can be called rotten, bad-looking, this is it. Well, what does it look like? Well, it looks like a sort of a cross between a fish, a snake, and an eel. And it has a sickly color to it. It looks like it's born dead, if you know what it's about. The lampreys I've seen, they come about this long, roughly. They're about anywhere from 8 inches to 10, 12, 13 inches long. That's the lamprey. But where he really gets rotten looking is his head. His head, if you have a dictionary, look it up. They probably got a picture in there. His head is a round disc, flat, like a suction disc. And it's got inside, it's got a ring of curious-looking teeth inside of this thing. So if you can imagine a suction disc, one of these rubber suction discs that has teeth in it. Well, what this thing does, it lives off other fish, and it will swim up to a fish. And here's this fish, any kind of a fish, a big fish laying there, see, in a very perfectly healthy fish. And the lamprey will swim up to the side of it and attach itself, just like a suction disc, to the side of this fish, and literally suck the juice out of that fish. It just absolutely kills them. There is no way. And so these things happen to also have no natural enemies, or at least they thought they did. They had no natural enemies. And they were fantastically destructive. And within a period of about 5 years, they killed almost the entire fish population of the Great Lakes. It was not man that did it. It was the lamprey that did it, friend. And so what he did then, I can remember when, walking along as a kid, I can remember walking along the shores of Lake Michigan, and you see this fish laying there that's been washed up on the shores. And, oh, what a scene. I mean, here, attached to it, there's a round red sore on the side, about the size of a Kennedy $50, roughly, on the side of the fish. And it's raw and red. And attached to it, quite often, was this evil-looking snake-like thing. That's the lamprey. Well, this thing was, talk about destroying the ecology. This thing took over the scene, and within a short time, forget it. There's no more commercial fishing to speak of all up and down the shores of the lake. And very few fish of the old... Now they're beginning to come back, because what they did, they discovered that there was a certain type of chemical or something that destroyed the very young lampreys. And now it's coming back. So here's a case of man really saving the ecology. It has nothing to do with littering. Now I'm going to tell you something I just saw 2 weeks ago. You ready for this? I was down on the west coast of Florida. All set, man? I'm down. How much time do we have? 3 minutes. All right. I'll give you 3 minutes, enough time to make you sick. So I'm on the west coast of Florida in the Gulf of Mexico. And I was in a boat with an ecologist. In case you're curious, he's a state ecologist from the state of Florida. And we're floating along about 100 feet from the shore. This is salt water. And what a fantastic sight. I'd say about every 5 or 10 feet laying on the shore, washed up on the shore, are enormous, tremendous tarpon. Have you ever seen a tarpon? It's a beautiful fish. If you can imagine this great 100-pound silver fish laying on the shore, rotting away in the sun, and there were thousands of them. And as far as you could see along the shoreline were dead fish. Did man do this? No. There's a thing you've probably heard of called a red tide, and nobody knows very much about it. It's an organism that's in the water that seems to go through cycles, and for a long time it just doesn't do anything. Then all of a sudden, this organism multiplies catastrophically by the millions, billions, trillions, and it makes the surface of the water look vaguely rust-colored. And it moves up north, and it moved up north through this area there, and what it does is it attacks the gills of fish. Great fish. There's no way for them to get away from it. So as soon as this fish gets any of this these regular organisms in his gills, he's literally drowned. His gills don't work anymore. He can't breathe, and he's dead. Now, this is really ecology. And this ecologist that I was with, he says, I'm so mad. He said, I really get bugged. All these amateur people popping off all the time, constantly talking about the bad stuff. The bad. He said, oh, sure, we do a lot of bad things to the earth. He's not trying to condone anything we do. He said, but wow. He says, ain't nothing like man really in nature for real destructiveness of the ecology of an area. Now, what I have just said is a controversial remark. Because one of the things that's deeply held by Western man is that I guess it goes back to the concept of original sin, to get really philosophical here about it, is that the most evil thing on earth is man. He really believes this. And to point out that we have our destruction of the environment is really comparatively small for example, you know, over and over again, they keep saying that man causes forest fires. Well, man does cause some forest fires. But do you know what the number one reason for forest fires? Lightning. Not cigarettes. Sorry. Lightning. So if you did away with cigarettes and matches tomorrow, you would still have catastrophic forest fires that would range. And by the way, most responsible ecologists will tell you that the forest fire is not nearly as bad as most people think, that it does much good in nature. So, you know, where do you go from here? But this whole business of ecology it's like most fads that sweep this country. People get all hung on a fad without really knowing much about the actual scientists. A few years ago, everybody was hung on psychiatry. And there were more people walking around cocktail parties blabbing off about a very specialized study of medicine than you'd ever believe. And, oh, yes, they knew all about that. The average layman would sit there and talk about Adlerian versus Jungian psychiatry. Come on. What do you know about either Adler or Jung, except that what you heard once in a Paul Newman movie? One night, listening to the Johnny Carson show, Jane Fonda told you about it. So most people are studying Indians by watching Dick Cavett. And so it's, you know, I guess most people study ecology by watching 58-second spots that tell them not to throw beer bottles away. And that's what ecology is. Nobody mentions the red tide. Nobody mentions the lamprey. Nobody discusses the walking catfish. Nobody even deals ever with things like strange diseases like encephalitis that will kill millions of deer almost overnight. You know, that's such a drag. Also, it's very complicated, you know. So who needs that? Who needs that?